Hello, and welcome to Random Walk, a sciencey podcast where we take steps of unit length 1 with directions randomly selected and independent of the previous steps. I'm your host, Adam Fortis. Now, this is a bit of a revamp of Random Walk, so let's call it Season 2 and reintroduce what Random Walk means. In math or whatever, a random walk is a process that we can use to describe all sorts of things. Sometimes it's called a drunkard's walk, and here's how it works. Say I'm drunk. I step outside of the bar and have some vague idea of where I'm going, i.e. home. But being drunk, the direction I choose for my first step is picked at random. Let's say I can turn left or right out of the door. It's a 50-50 chance, so let's say I go left for exactly one step. Now I need to take a second step. Being drunk, the direction I choose to go is again picked at random. So now I could either be 2 steps left, or 1 step left and 1 step right. Back at the bar. Say I live just down the street from the bar, maybe 100 steps right. How many steps will it take for me to get home? Hard to say. There's no guarantee I will get home. It's possible I walk the exact wrong direction every single step, but that's highly unlikely. It's also possible that in 100 steps, I, return home. Again, highly unlikely. Any guesses where the most likely location I'll end up in is? Random walks, and modified random walks, are used everywhere to model stuff. And that's kind of why I picked random walk to describe this podcast. We're going to start here, at the bar, and I'm going to tell you about the things I stumble upon as I wobble my way around the world of research. Who knows where we'll end up? Alright, now that we have that out of the way, this week we are talking Ig Nobel Prizes. They've been awarded for 2021. And for those who have not experienced these yet, they're like the Nobel Prizes, but with a better selection process. Just kidding. Sort of. The world's most successful climate-based agreement had its 30-somethingth anniversary on September 16th. Let me tell you about it, will ya? A brand new climate-focused reporting outfit right here in Ontario. It's about time, right? And the second episode of Gamer's Guide to Ecology, where Jessie deHaan dives into the fauna of Red Dead Redemption 2. But first, this podcast is brought to you by scientificcanada.ca. The goal of Scientific Canada is to get real science to real people, which we do by producing entertaining and informative content about research, academia, and, being a curious nerd in general. A big part of our thing is finding and promoting new projects and new voices, with financial support and expertise. So if you have an idea for a project, we'd love to hear from you. Head to scientificcanada.ca to see some of the shows and articles we've helped with. And if you want to discuss details, you can find me on Twitter at Adam Fortis, Fortais, or email me at fortisadam@gmail.com. Support for our projects comes from our generous and very, very smart Patreon subscribers. Find out more about how you can help with our new projects over at patreon.com/scican. Thanks!
Hey there, welcome back. I'm Jessie D, a master's student in Ecology and Evolution and an open-world RPG gamer. You're listening to episode 2 of Gamer's Guide to Ecology, where I play popular open-world RPGs from an ecological perspective. On today's episode, I talk about the biodiversity and notable animal behaviors observed in Red Dead Redemption 2. You can follow along with my playthroughs on twitch.tv/justjessied on Thursday and Friday nights from 7 to 10 p.m. If you recall, ecology is the study of how organisms interact with their environment. Last week on episode 1, I talked about the biomes in RDR2 and the impacts of human activity on the in-game environment. We learned that these impacts are called anthropogenic disturbances. That type of large-scale view of ecology is called landscape ecology. There are other levels of ecology too, ranging from broad interactions, like how carbon dioxide concentration impacts global temperature, to specific interactions like how plants or animals regulate their water at high temperatures. In this episode, I'm going to focus on community and behavioral ecology. I'll give you an overview of the in-game biodiversity, and then talk about some excellent examples of realistic animal behaviors. Finally, I'll wrap up with my thoughts on animal-player interactions, such as hunting and fishing in the game. Community ecology is the study of interactions between populations of different species living in a given area. The diversity of all living things in an area is referred to as its biodiversity or species richness. The developers of Red Dead Redemption 2 modeled a high level of biodiversity, with about 200 animal species and 40 plus harvestable plants. The harvestable plants can be used to make food, medicine, or poisons in-game. In biology, life is classified using a 7-tiered system according to an organism's evolutionary lineage and genetic similarity to other organisms. This system is called taxonomy, and the tiers are domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. Each class of animals in the phylum Chordata are represented in RDR2: fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. In-game, you can find fish in rivers, lakes, and swamps, such as pickerel, gar, muskie, perch, bass, salmon, trout, and sturgeon. Bullfrogs and 2 species of toad are the only in-game amphibians, but reptiles have quite a few representatives in venomous snakes, snapping turtles, alligators, iguanas, and more. The developers modeled a huge variety of bird species too, including small songbirds, jays, crows and ravens, waterfowl, gulls, birds of prey, herons, and egrets. Finally, mammals in RDR2 are especially diverse: large and small, domesticated and wild, solitary and social. Solitary animals are those that live on their own and only interact with others of their kind to mate. Social animals are those that live in groups. Social animals can live in groups for safety, for access to mates, for ease of hunting, or for help raising offspring. I love that animals interact realistically with one another in this game. Herbivores graze on grasses and quickly flee if the game's character approaches. Carnivorous predators like cougars and wolves intelligently hunt and stalk their prey. Bears patiently catch fish in rushing mountain streams. Cats catch small birds and rats and scratch at wooden posts. Hawks dive down and catch fish from lakes and snatch snakes and rabbits out of tall grasses. Even animals with horns and antlers like deer and bighorn sheep battle it out in head-to-head combat. Literally. The developers did a really great job capturing animal behaviors. As for animal and player interactions, my inner ecologist is happy because you can complete a compendium in this game, which is a sort of catalog or encyclopedia of all the animals in the game. You add records to your compendium by completing a set of tasks for each animal. The tasks include studying the animal close up or using binoculars from far away, tracking the animal, and then killing and skinning it. Although not to the extremes of killing and harvesting, completing a catalog of creatures is often mandatory in real-world land surveys before houses can be built on top of wilderness areas. However, one thing I don't like about this game is that it encourages trophy hunting by rewarding players for hunting rare and unique animals, referred to as legendary animals in-game. Trophy hunting is a wasteful form of hunting where whole or large portions of the animal are put on display, but the meat is not used for sustenance nor the hide for creating materials. To wrap up, I think the folks at Rockstar Games did a great job of modeling animals and realistically capturing many of their interactions and behaviors at a community and individual scale. Thanks so much for listening today. If you'd like to support the podcast, like and review it on whichever platform you're listening, and please follow and subscribe to my Twitch channel as well. Come say hi during streams at twitch.tv/justjessied, that's JUSTJESSIED. Your support means that I can buy more open-world RPG games and keep making episodes about in-game ecology. Thanks for tuning in. Hope to catch you next time. Theme music is called Rain Song by Brett Eagleston, and you can hear more of his music at bretteagleston.bandcamp.com.
So I started writing these really free-form and minimally guided blog posts over on the Journal of Fluid Mechanics and Flows websites. These are 2 academic journals specializing in the physics, math, and applications of fluid dynamics research. And the one stipulation that I was given is that I need to talk about and link to some new research articles being published in these 2 journals. Other than that, I'm pretty much free to do whatever I want, so I set myself a goal. If I can find a climate story in the research, I gotta go for it. So this has led me down a bunch of rabbit holes, and I've been learning a lot. And today I want to tell you about one of these holes, and honestly, maybe one of the only true successful climate initiatives Canada has been a part of. It also lines up fairly well time-wise, since September 16th marks its 30-something anniversary, I think like 34 years. So yeah, growing up as a 90s kid, my understanding of the climate crisis came more or less from Fern Gully, Captain Planet, and vague TV references to the hole in the ozone layer. To me, as a child, the solution was to 1. Turn off the tap when you brush your teeth. 2. Stop cutting down trees. And 3. Eliminate spray cans and refrigerators. Also, I learned that pollution was horny as hell. Remember Hexus from Fern Gully?
Slime beneath me, slime up above. Ooh, you love my toxic love.
Of these issues, though, I thought the spray can one was basically a fixed problem. Turns out that's kind of true, and that's mostly thanks to the Montreal Protocol. In 1987, 46 signatories in Montreal ratified this treaty. It was designed to phase out the use of ozone-depleting hydrocarbons, which came into widespread use, of course, in the 50s and 60s, as more products requiring solvents, propellants, and refrigerants came to market. In hindsight, though, the quickness with which the Montreal Protocol was ratified is kind of staggering. In 1976, the National Research Council in the United States issued one of the very first reports confirming that these types of hydrocarbons could be reacting in the stratosphere, causing the loss of our ozone layer. Then, in 1985, researchers from the British Antarctic Survey reported significant ozone loss above the South Pole, consistent with this 1976 report. Several other studies followed, finding similarly shocking results. And this ultimately led to the signing of basically the most successful international climate agreement in UN history. In 2009, it was the first UN treaty to be universally ratified, having been signed by 196 countries and the European Union. So we all got on board. Sweet. Before the Montreal Protocol, though, ozone-depleting hydrocarbons like chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, better known as CFCs, and hydrofluorocarbons, HCFCs, were used in a variety of products, often for their high volatility and ability to reduce the viscosity of fluids. These features enabled aerosol manufacturers to use CFCs as both solvent for the paint or coating or whatever it is that they want to be blasting, as well as the compressed propellant, which ejected the material as an aerosol spray. Limiting the use of CFCs and HCFCs is a huge success, and the UN is now projecting that the ozone layer could return to pre-1980 levels by the mid-century. But there are plenty of alternative compounds that have replaced them, many of which are dangerous in their own way. These alternatives may be safer for the ozone layer, but are often toxic, flammable, carcinogenic, or even release carbon dioxide if they're burned up. But, these aerosol products are extremely useful, especially in painting. That's a huge industry that requires, these aerosols and sprays. And because these aerosols are so useful, it's, unlikely that we're ever going to totally get away from aerosols. But there are new inventions that can be leveraged in certain applications to replace some of these aerosol-based techniques. The article that I was writing about is about one of these new techniques. It's basically like taking an inkjet cartridge and shaking it like a ketchup bottle. It sounds simple and a little bit silly, but it actually works out pretty well and solves a bunch of important problems that's forced us to continue using spray products, which I'll also add are kind of wasteful. Apparently as much as 70% of the paint or coating that's being sprayed out won't actually make it to the correct location, so that's effectively wasted. But yeah, when that gets published, I'll link to it on our website. Climate change, huh? As much as you want to bring your reusable bags to the grocery store and, find ways to eliminate waste and drive less, we're not going to fix anything without big companies and governments making big changes themselves. But sad to say, we aren't going to get it unless governments and companies are held accountable. It's actually pretty easy for them to miss climate goals, or if newspapers and media companies have to find space for their climate reporting, if they have to fight to actually get it to us, then we're only going to see a small sliver of the stories that matter. And I think that's why more and more climate-centric or even climate-exclusive media companies are starting to pop up. People want to know why we've missed every single climate target since who knows when, as Canadians. And more importantly, we want to see that our representatives are actually making decisions actively to hit our next targets. The kind of things that seem to get reported on as news have to be big and dramatic if they're fighting for space with, everything else. Seeing only big breaking news like, forest fires and pipelines, but missing out on smaller everyday analysis, it's easy for us to miss out on the important context and bigger overarching stories going on all around us at all times. It's easy to have a vague idea of the climate emergency while still having no clue if the province and the, people you voted for are, doing a good job or doing a bad job. Keeping up with all this information, forming opinions, and, using these opinions to inform how you vote and spend your money is a full-time job, and that's why we need more climate-based reporting. Well, good news. People at the Narwhal, a Canadian journalistic group, a Canadian media company, has just opened their Ontario Climate Office. The team is kind of an all-star team of Canadian journalists. We're talking Bureau Chief Denise Balkasoon, an award-winning journalist who joins the Narwhal after serving as executive editor of Chatelaine. Previously, Balkasoon worked as a columnist and editor at the Globe and Mail. Then we've got, in the words of Mike D'Souza, writing for the Narwhal, a dynamic duo of agenda-setting reporters, Fatima Saeed and Emma McIntosh. Of all three of these reporters, I think the first one I recognized was Fatima Saeed. She's been a fixture over on Canada Land and has been killing it on her podcast, The Backbench. It's one of my favorite news podcasts for Canadians. Emma McIntosh also has a killer track record. McIntosh worked previously as an investigative reporter at the Toronto Star and most recently as Queen's Park reporter at Canada's National Observer. In 2019, McIntosh's investigation into an oil sands leak that affected Fort McKay First Nation won a Canadian Association of Journalists Award for Human Rights Reporting. So, good team over there. So I've been reading the Narwhal for a little while, and I think one of my favorite things that they do is their explainer pieces. These are less about breaking news stories and more about doing deep dives into issues to get readers up to speed and help them contextualize the big issues. I'm coming to environment and policy from a purely academic background, and I'll tell you, academics are smart and very good at learning and understanding things, but I'm in grade 22 by now, and I think the last time I actually had a class on politics was civics and careers in grade 9. I think I'm probably like most people. I've had to kind of scrap my way through this world and learn about this stuff kind of on the fly. So coming from the sciencey end, it's not too difficult to, call people out on technical details and claims, but it's a whole other thing figuring out how the actual politics of these issues work. And that's why I go to the Narwhal. So yeah, I'm excited about this new Ontario Bureau because really, how many Ontario-centric environmental stories can you think of? I mean, I can recall a few. They sort of pop up and disappear just as quickly, and then you never really hear about them again. So I'll be keeping an eye on what these women do, and probably cite their work a lot on this podcast. So I don't know, heads up. You can probably beat me to these stories if you just read it yourself. So yeah, details in the show notes. Okay, we are almost out of time, but I think we can squeeze one more story in. My favorite prize in all of science was announced recently, the Ig Nobel Prize, which is awarded, quote, for achievements that make people laugh and then make them think. This year was the 31st ceremony, and, well, these awards seem to be often animal-based, and this year is kind of no different. But there's some pretty good stuff here. So, if this is your first time hearing about the awards, then it is my great honor to present to you the 2021 Ig Nobel Award winners. If you've heard about this before, then here, I'm just going to read you some of these winners. In biology, this is going to Suzanne Schatz, Robert Eklund, and Joost van de Weer for analyzing variations in purring, chirping, chittering, trilling, tweedling, murmuring, meowing, moaning, squeaking, hissing, yowling, howling, growling, and other modes of cat-human communication. There are a bunch of references. They have been working on this for quite some time. A small selection of their research papers. A comparative acoustic analysis of purring in 4 cats. A phonetic pilot study of vocalizations in 3 cats. A phonetic pilot study of chirp, chatter, tweet, and tweedle in 3 domestic cats. Okay, so I'm starting to see a bit of a theme here. I'm going to have to dig into this. Are they just talking about their own cats? I'm going to dig into this and I'll get back to you on it. The Ecology Prize goes to Leila Satari, Alba Goulian, Angela Vidal-Vidu, and Manuel Porcar for using genetic analysis to identify the different species of bacteria that reside in wads of discarded chewing gum stuck on pavements in various countries. There's just one reference here called the wasted chewing gum bacteriome. Any questions? The Chemistry Prize. There are a ton of names here. I'm not going to read them all. The award is going for chemically analyzing the air inside movie theaters to test whether the odor produced by an audience reliably indicates the level of violence, sex, antisocial behavior, drug use, and bad language in the movie that the audience is watching. Yikes. Proof of concept study, testing human volatile organic compounds as a tool for age classification of films. Interesting. And cinema data mining, the smell of fear. What else we have here? Economics Prize is awarded for discovering that the obesity of a country's politicians may be a good indicator of that country's corruption. I'm gonna have to fact check that one. Is this just like a correlation, causation thing? This seems bad. Okay, let's fly through these. Medicine Prize. The medical prize is going for demonstrating that sexual orgasms can be as effective as decongestant medicines at improving nasal breathing. The Peace Prize is being awarded for testing the hypothesis that humans evolved beards to protect themselves from punches to the face. Okay, I gotta read the reference here. Impact protection potential of mammalian hair. Testing the pugilism hypothesis for the evolution of human facial hair. Okay. Physics Prize. Here we go. This is for me. Not actually by me. But you know what I mean. For conducting experiments to learn why pedestrians do not constantly collide with other pedestrians. And the reference, physics-based modeling and data representation of pairwise interactions among pedestrians. I'm going to dig into this one for sure. Kinetics Prize, I would have thought this was also physics, but it is going for conducting experiments to learn why pedestrians do something. Oh God. For conducting experiments to learn why pedestrians do sometimes collide with other pedestrians. These must be competing labs. This reference, mutual anticipation can contribute to self-organization in human crowds. We're getting close to the end here. Entomology Prize for this research study, a new method of cockroach control on submarines. I mean, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. And finally, Transportation Prize for determining by experiment whether it is safer to transport an airborne rhinoceros upside down. This one made a lot of news. The reference, the pulmonary and metabolic effects of suspension by the feet compared with lateral recumbency in immobilized black rhinoceros, captured by aerial darting. You can see how this is actually kind of important, but you got to see the pictures too. I'll post them in the show notes. It's good. So, obviously there's a lot to talk about here and I'd love to get into it, but we'll have to save some of this for later episodes and blog posts. Again, on scientificcanada.ca. So if any of those piqued your interest, let me know on Twitter at Adam Fortis. And that's it for this episode. If you have comments or questions, find me on Twitter at Adam Fortis, that's Fortais, or you can email me at fortisadam@gmail.com. Our music was provided by my friends over at Booney. Find them on booney.rocks. If you like the show, share it with a friend. We are on all streaming platforms and YouTube. Just look for Scientific Canada. And if you want to learn more, or if you want to help support some of our creators, head to our website, scientificcanada.ca. Alright, see you next week.
Slime beneath me, slime up above. Ooh, you love my toxic love. I
see the world and all the creatures in it. I suck 'em dry and spit 'em out like spinach. 'Cause greedy human beings will always let